The Center for Disease Control is supposed to be the gold standard of the U.S. public health system, and it has been tarnished. We rely on CDC to protect us and uphold the highest standards of safety. But the recent anthrax event and newly disclosed incidents have raised very serious questions about CDC's ability to safeguard properly selected agents in its own labs. The CDC director has called a potential anthrax exposure a wake-up call. But our investigation has uncovered this is not CDC's first wake-up call. I'm not even sure wake-up call is the proper term. This is a gross and dangerous understatement.
I think we can all agree the reports on this incident are bad. But what's even more troubling to me is that in context, they reveal a broad problem with the CDC safety culture. We've received report after report from GAO, the HHS, AIG, and APHIS offering a multitude of warnings and recommendations on operations of high containment labs.
My question is this. How many CDC laboratory workers received the FDA-licensed anthrax vaccine prior to the anthrax incident last month as recommended by the CDC, its Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices Committee for Lab Workers since 2002?
I would have to get back to you on the exact number, but we offer anthrax vaccine to anyone for whom anthrax vaccine is indicated. We don't require people to get vaccinated, but we offer it to anyone who might be exposed through their laboratory or epidemiologic work.
At our request, GAO, the Government Accountability Office, also looked into lab safety. GAO reported in a number of studies, one as recently as 2013, on the problems associated with the government's fragmented, piecemeal approach to these labs. No single agency has oversight over all high-containment biolabs. There are no national standards for operation, and we have no record of how many labs even exist.
It's troubling this has gone on for years now with GAO, APHIS, the Inspector General. Outside experts have been calling attention to these issues, and I'm encouraged because you've been forthcoming in your statements. You haven't been defensive, but what is your current action plan now going forward in detail? Is there a culture among researchers? What is it, and get specific for us from this day forward with these recommendations? What are you going to do in the time frame? Thank you.
Well, first, I think for past incidents, the staff at CDC and the scientists did take the reports seriously and did respond to those individual reports. What we missed was a pattern. And you're absolutely right that pattern was an inadequate culture of safety. So the overarching challenge now is to ensure that we establish and strengthen a culture of safety in all of our laboratories throughout all of CDC.
Deficiencies in select agent standards at these CDC-regulated and USDA-regulated other laboratories are amply documented in HHS and USDA OIG audits.
Dr. You're way over time. I'm going to have to just give you 15 more seconds.
One final point, which is I note that the CDC and USDA not only perform and fund select agent work, but also regulate biosafety and biosecurity for select agent work. This represents a clear conflict of interest. This systematic, clear conflict of interest may at least partly account for the deficiencies that I've mentioned. So these are problems of individuals, but they're problems of individuals acting in a context. That context has two components. The one is the laboratory culture. And we've talked several times, or heard several times today, about a culture of lax attitude toward safety. That is part of the problem. We've also heard several times today about researchers becoming inured to working with dangerous or hazardous materials. That is part of the problem. What hasn't been mentioned before with respect to culture is hubris. And hubris is fundamentally part of the problem here. A sense of the scientist that he or she should be able to proceed without restriction and without management. So these are all issues with the culture. But in addition to that culture, you have an institutional structure. You have institutional management, and then you have the oversight of that institution. I think these are even bigger problems that are even more significantly responsible for the issues that I described. I mentioned the fact that CDC and USDA regulate their own biosafety and biosecurity. They perform the work. They fund the work. That's an inherent conflict of interest. Until that regulatory responsibility is moved out of those two agencies and out of any agency that performs select agent research and funds select agent research, I believe you can predict with high confidence that the same types of problems, the same patterns, and the same cultures will remain in place in CDC labs, in USDA labs, and in the approximately 1,000 other labs they regulate.
Thank you. My time is way over. I'm going to now recognize Ms. Taquet for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll follow up on your questions. Mr. Kaufman, I have no doubt that these individuals have no ill motives. They're well motivated. They're trying to do their research. And Dr. Enbright, I think you would agree with that as well.
I would.
But let me just put this in context. I don't know if you were here when we gave our opening statements. I've been on this subcommittee since 1997. And I've got to tell you that the reason why we're so concerned here is because this kind of practice keeps happening over and over again. It's not just one isolated incident.